Keanu Reeves slips into his own restaurant for a quiet breakfast, but his waitress, not recognizing him, vents about terrible tips and unfair pay. Frozen in shock, he suddenly sees how his successful business is failing the people who run it. That awkward complaint pushes him to change everything, from wages to tipping policy, to finally do right by his staff. Keanu never imagined that the most honest review of his restaurant would come from a tired waitress who had no idea who he was. By the time she finally let the truth slip, his fork was frozen halfway to his mouth, and his whole idea of doing good was starting to crack. Most mornings, Keanu Reeves blended into Los Angeles like any other exhausted face under a worn baseball cap. The city was barely awake when he stepped out of a black SUV on a quiet side street, tugging his hoodie a little lower, breathing in the cool air that still smelled more like night than day. Neon signs flickered off one by one, but one sign above him was already glowing bright and steady, his own surname in brushed steel, mounted above a glass door. He stared at it for a second, the way you look at a reflection you're not sure you recognize anymore, then pushed inside. The warmth hit him first: coffee, sizzling bacon, butter on hot toast. His restaurant, Harbor and Halo, sounded like a carefully designed brand in the headlines, but from the inside it lived like any neighborhood diner, clinking cutlery, soft music, the hiss of the espresso machine. He paused just past the doorway, letting his eyes adjust. A cook shouted, "Order up." A plate almost slipped from another server's hands. Someone laughed too loudly near the back booth. It felt alive, a little chaotic, and very human. That was what he'd wanted when he'd signed all those contracts and trusted the management company that promised to handle the boring parts. A young woman in a pale blue shirt and red apron slid around a corner with a practiced spin, dodging a toddler with a crayon. Her blonde ponytail was starting to lose its battle against gravity, and a small ink stain dotted the collar of her shirt, but she carried herself with the speed and focus of someone who had been awake far too long. She noticed him standing there, and without even glancing twice at his face, flashed him a tired but genuine smile. "Morning," she said, catching her breath as she grabbed a notepad. "Just you?" "Yeah," he answered softly, his voice lower than it sounded in movies. "Just me." "Booth or counter, mystery man?" she asked, already moving toward the row of booths by the window. "Booth's perfect," he replied, following her. The nickname made him smile. People usually either recognized him immediately or stared too hard trying to place him. She did neither. There was something freeing in that. He slid into the booth, taking in the open kitchen view. A line cook in a bandana was flipping pancakes like it was a sport, calling playful insults to the dishwasher. The manager, tall, pressed shirt, perfect tie, stood near the coffee station, his eyes scanning the floor like a security camera. No warmth in that gaze, Keanu noticed, just calculation. He filed that thought away. The waitress set a menu in front of him. Her name tag was a little crooked, Lily. "Coffee?" she asked. "You look like you need coffee or a week of sleep, or both." He chuckled. "You might be right. Coffee first. Strong. Whatever you drink when you have to be charming at 7 in the morning." "That's called regret with a splash of cream," she joked, already reaching for the pot. "I'll hook you up." As she poured, he studied her face, dark circles under her eyes, a tiny heart tattoo on her wrist, a faint line of worry between her brows that looked too permanent for someone her age. She moved quickly, efficiently, the way people do when they're used to being behind and never fully caught up. "So what's good here?" he asked, even though he'd personally approved half the items on the menu years ago. "Honestly," she said, leaning in like she was revealing a secret, "the pancakes are dangerous. The avocado toast is overpriced, but people love it. And the breakfast plate is what you order if you're planning to save the world or destroy it. Big day fuel." Her eyes flicked to his hoodie and old boots. "You look like a breakfast plate kind of guy." He smiled. "Then I'll take the breakfast plate, eggs over easy, and some orange juice, please." "You got it." She scribbled the order and stepped away, already weaving between tables before he could say thanks. Keanu wrapped his fingers around the coffee mug, letting the heat soak into his hands. This was supposed to be a simple visit. No PR team, no investors, no smiling for photos. Just him, seeing how things really felt when no one knew the owner had slipped in through the door. He'd been meaning to do this for months, but filming, meetings, premieres, they all stacked up until his restaurant became something he visited on spreadsheets instead of in person. Looking around now, listening to the overlapping conversations, he wondered how much of the truth a spreadsheet could ever hold. A sudden shriek of laughter burst from the next booth. A small boy had somehow launched his orange juice into the air, and it hit the floor with a dramatic crash, sending a wave of sticky liquid toward Keanu's boots. Lily darted in like a superhero, sliding a tray between his feet and the spill in one smooth move. "Whoa, little dude, save some chaos for the afternoon," she said, grinning at the boy as she knelt to mop up the mess. The boy's mother apologized at least 6 times. Keanu waved it off, grabbing a few napkins and helping contain the juice river before it reached the aisle. "Occupational hazard," he said lightly. "I've dodged worse." Lily looked up at him with a quick, amused squint, as if trying to place that line, then shook her head and got back to work. "Thanks for the assist, mystery man. I'll have your food out in a sec. Try not to start any food fights while I'm gone." He watched her hurry away, noticing the way she put a comforting hand on the mother's shoulder before she left that table, how she crouched to eye level with the toddler instead of scolding him from above. There was a softness there, a kind of love that showed up as patience when it would have been easier to snap. He liked that this was the kind of person wearing his restaurant's name on her apron. When his plate arrived, it looked perfect. Eggs gleaming, bacon crisp, toast buttery and hot. For a second, he felt a childish wave of satisfaction. His place, his food, people enjoying something he'd helped create, but the feeling didn't quite settle. Something in the air felt off, like a soundtrack with a wrong note he couldn't yet hear clearly. Lily set down the plate, then slid a receipt folder onto the table next to it. There was a deep breath in her chest she seemed to swallow back before speaking. "Let me know if you need anything else," she said. The brightness in her voice slipped for just a fraction of a second. "Anything at all." He caught the crack and tilted his head. "Long morning already." "Long year," she blurted out, then winced as if she'd said too much. "Sorry, that was sorry. Enjoy your breakfast." She turned to go, but a folded receipt half fell from her apron pocket and fluttered to the floor at his feet. He picked it up, saw a total at the bottom and underneath it. Service fee 18% added. Next to the printed words, angry handwriting scrawled in blue pen, "No tip already included. You're welcome." He looked up. Lily had gone still, her shoulders tight. When she turned back, her face was flushed with equal parts embarrassment and anger. "That from this morning?" he asked gently, holding out the receipt. She hesitated, then took it. "Yeah, table 6, 2 lattes, 3 custom orders, 15 minutes of explaining the menu and smiling like my life wasn't falling apart. 0 tip because people think this service fee goes to us." She shook her head, voice dropping into a hoarse whisper meant only for him. "Spoiler alert, it doesn't." Keanu felt something sharp press against his ribs. "It doesn't go to you." "Nope," she said, lip trembling with a frustration that had clearly been waiting for a crack to escape through. "It goes to the house. That's what the manager says. Customers think they already took care of us, so they don't tip. Our base pay is." She looked around, checking that the manager was still in the back. "It's garbage. I have 2 other jobs. I sleep 4 hours a night. Last week my little brother's asthma got so bad I almost called in, and the text I got back was, 'If you don't show, don't bother coming back.'" Her throat bobbed. "I like the regulars here, I even like the food, but this place is hard." He stared at her, every word landing heavier than the last. The restaurant logo, his name, stylized and clean, was printed on the corner of the receipt she was crumpling in her hand. The same name etched on the glass door outside, the same name investors praised for being good for the brand. He suddenly felt like the building was slowly leaning toward him, daring him to admit how little he really knew about what happened under that polished sign. "I'm sorry," he said quietly, and it wasn't the automatic apology strangers pass back and forth. It was heavier, almost an admission. "The owners, they know about this." Her laugh came out more like a bitter exhale. "The owners," she repeated, flicking her eyes toward the logo above the bar. "The guy whose name is on the door, I don't think he even knows we exist. They say he's this big-hearted movie hero, does all this charity stuff. Good for him. Meanwhile, I'm crying in my car because a customer thought 18% printed on a bill meant I don't need to pay rent. The fork in Keanu's hand stopped halfway to his mouth. Her words hit him like a punch he never saw coming. Big-hearted movie hero. Doesn't even know we exist. He saw the reflection of his own name on the chrome coffee machine across the room, warping slightly in the curve of the metal, and for a moment he hated it. Lily realized how harsh she sounded and swallowed hard, eyes glossing with sudden guilt. Sorry, I shouldn't be dumping this on you. You're just eating your breakfast. I'm fine, really. She shrugged, the kind of shrug people use instead of breaking down. I just wish the guy who owns this place would sit right where you are just once and listen. That's all. The din of the restaurant seemed to fade, replaced by the rushing in his ears. He felt the weight of every decision he'd left to someone else, every cheerful report about profit margins and operational efficiency. His appetite vanished. For a heartbeat, he considered telling her the truth right then, blurting out his name like a confession. But his tongue wouldn't move. He was frozen, pinned to the booth by her disappointment in a man she'd never met but thought she knew. Behind Lily, the polished manager stepped out from behind the coffee station, straightening his tie, his eyes locking directly on Keanu's booth as his phone buzzed in his hand. Something in his expression shifted. Recognition, calculation, a sudden flash of alarm, as he started walking toward them, faster now, cutting through the dining room. Lily followed Keanu's line of sight, turning just as the manager's voice, tight and too bright, rang out across the clatter of dishes. "Mr. Reeves," he called, loud enough for half the room to hear. Lily's notepad slipped from her fingers and hit the floor. She turned back to Keanu in slow motion, her face draining of color as the name echoed in her head, the realization slamming into the space between them like a dropped plate that hadn't shattered yet, but was about to. Lily felt the floor tilt under her as the manager's voice cut through the restaurant noise. Every eye near them shifted from their plates to the booth where she stood. She looked at the man she'd just complained to, really looked this time. The familiar jawline, the tired but kind eyes, the unmistakable face she'd seen 100 times on movie posters taped to her brother's bedroom wall. Her mouth went dry. The room seemed to shrink until it was just the two of them and the weight of every word she'd just said. Keanu exhaled slowly as if bracing for impact, but his voice stayed soft. "I'm still just a guy eating breakfast," he said to her almost in a whisper. "Nothing's changed." But everything had changed. She could feel it in the way the customers stared, in the way the busboy suddenly straightened his posture, in the way the cook peeked over the heat lamps. Her heart pounded against her ribs, beating out the words, "You're fired, you're fired, you're fired." The manager reached the table with a smile so wide it looked painful. "Mr. Reeves, what an honor," he gushed, ignoring Lily completely. "I wish we'd had notice. This place would be shining." He flicked a quick, irritated glance at the half-wiped juice on the floor and the scattered napkins. "Can I get you anything? Private dining room? Security at the door." Keanu shook his head. "No, I'm fine right here." His gaze didn't leave Lily's face. "We were just talking." "Ah, yes, Lily is one of our more talkative servers," the manager said tightly. "Always full of opinions." He adjusted his tie, the charm cracking at the edges. "But I'm sure she wasn't bothering you with any of that back-of-house nonsense. Our operations are running perfectly. Profits are strong, guest satisfaction is." "Is that true?" Keanu cut in, still looking at Lily. "About the service fee, about your pay." The question hung in the air like a held breath. Lily felt the manager's hand clamp gently, warningly onto her elbow. "Mr. Reeves, please," he laughed. "This is not the time to trouble you with accounting details. We've got it under control. Staff are compensated very competitively for this market. Right, Lily?" His fingers tightened, the smile never reaching his eyes. Her throat burned. She knew this moment. She'd been here before in other uniforms, other jobs, told to smile and agree to say everything was fine because the person in charge needed it to be fine. Her rent depended on that. Her brother's inhaler depended on that. But then she remembered how her hands had shaken over that cruel service fee receipt, how she'd almost quit last week, and then realized she couldn't afford to. She looked at Keanu and saw something unexpected. Not irritation, not boredom, but a kind of quiet, aching concern. He repeated more gently, "I'm asking you, is it true?" Her chest rose and fell as if she'd run a mile standing still. The manager's fingers dug in harder. She could taste fear, metallic and familiar, but under it something else stirred. She was so tired of pretending, so tired of swallowing the truth to keep everyone else comfortable. She stepped just out of the manager's grip. "Yes," she said, voice low but clear. "It's true. The service fee doesn't come to us. People stop tipping because they think it does. Our base pay is barely anything. We cover for understaffed shifts, we get yelled at for food we didn't cook, and we smile while the house takes a cut of kindness meant for us." Her eyes shone, but she kept them steady on Keanu. "If you're asking me, sir, your policy is hurting your people." The restaurant went almost silent. Even the sizzle from the grill seemed to fade. The manager's smile dropped like a mask. For a stunned second, Keanu didn't speak. Then something in his expression shifted, like a curtain pulled back on a stage he suddenly realized was his. He swallowed, the words heavy as they left him. "Then this is my fault." Lily's breath hitched, and the manager, face reddening, leaned in as if to scold her, only to freeze as Keanu turned toward him with a calm that felt more dangerous than anger. In the cramped back office, the cheerful noise of the dining room became a muffled hum behind a closed door. The space smelled like burnt coffee and printer ink. A crooked motivational poster about teamwork hung above an overstuffed filing cabinet, its edges curling away from the wall. Keanu sat in a metal chair that squeaked under him, still in his hoodie, looking very out of place between spreadsheets and stained binders with labels like labor costs and vendor contracts. Across from him, the manager perched on the edge of his rolling chair, knuckles white on the armrests. Next to a flickering monitor, a sleek laptop was open to a live spreadsheet. "You have to understand, Mr. Reeves," the manager began, voice lower now that there were no customers listening. "Restaurants are razor-thin operations. The service fee is standard now. It's how we compete. We are following industry norms." Keanu tapped the edge of one of the printed reports. Numbers glared up at him, percentages, margins, neat bars of profit in confident green. "Industry norms," he repeated quietly. "And how much of that service fee goes directly to staff pay?" The manager cleared his throat. "Well, when you factor in overhead, credit card processing, franchise fees, branding." "How much," Keanu interrupted again, more firmly this time, "goes to them?" The manager hesitated, then finally answered. "Technically, none, but their base wage is." "So we take money customers think they're giving to servers," Keanu said slowly, like he was tasting something bitter. "Use it to make the place look good, and then tell staff they should be grateful they have a job." He let the sentence hang for a moment, hearing how ugly it sounded out loud. Outside the office, Lily sat on a milk crate near the walk-in fridge, twisting her apron in her hands. The adrenaline crash left her shaky, her stomach knotted into something hard and cold. The other servers slipped past her on their way to the floor, offering quick side glances, some impressed, some worried, all a little scared for her. The cook she joked with every morning paused long enough to murmur, "You've got guts, Lil," before disappearing back into the heat. She thought about texting her brother to warn him she might be home early with bad news. Then she pictured his face lighting up when he talked about the movies, the way he'd laugh and say, "If I ever met Keanu Reeves, I'd tell him he's the only celebrity I'd trust with my video game save files." The thought made her want to cry and laugh at the same time. Now she'd basically insulted that man to his face, in his own restaurant. On camera, probably. She'd seen phones pointed their way before the manager even said his name. Back inside the office, a vibration buzzed against the desk. Keanu's phone lit up with a notification preview. An online post already trending, blurry photo of him at the booth, headline half visible. "Keanu confronts Waitress over money." He felt a flash of dread at how easily the story could twist out of his hands. Fame always did that, took something messy and human and flattened it into a clickbait headline. He ignored the phone and leaned forward. "When we opened Harbor and Halo," he said, choosing his words carefully, "I told every investor and every manager the same thing. I didn't want another fancy space with my name on the wall. I wanted a place that felt like a harbor for staff as much as guests. Safe, fair." His jaw tightened. "Somewhere along the line we drifted, and I didn't notice." The manager's frustration finally boiled over. "With respect, sir, you're not here," he said. "You're on set, you're at premieres, you said you wanted it handled. We handled it. We kept the place profitable. If we raise wages, kill the service fee, and hand tips back to staff, we'll sink. Food costs are up. Rent is insane. Investors will walk. And if they walk, this restaurant closes. Then what happens to Lily, to the busboys, to everyone? Keanu sat back, the dilemma landing like a weight on his chest. Profit or people? Numbers or faces? The math on the page clashed with the memory of Lily's shaky voice. Somewhere on a couch in a tiny apartment, a teenage boy was breathing through an inhaler his sister could barely afford. "Call the investors," he said suddenly. The manager blinked. "Now." "Now," Keanu repeated. "Conference call, put them on speaker, and get Lily. She deserves to hear this too." A minute later, Lily stepped into the office, hands still damp from the quick, frantic table she'd served to cover for her break. She hovered near the door, clearly unsure if she should even be there. Keanu gestured to the chair beside him. "Please," he said, "sit." She sat on the very edge of the seat, as if ready to bolt at the first sign of trouble. On the desk, the phone lit up with multiple incoming calls. The manager connected them, his voice flipping back to polished mode. "Good morning, everyone. We have Mr. Reeves with us to discuss operations." Several confident voices filled the small room, investors talking over one another, talking in percentages and projections, never in names. They mentioned branding deals, expansion plans, a possible second location if the optics stay positive. None of them asked how the staff were really doing. Keanu listened for a full minute, letting their words pile up, his silence growing heavier. Then he pressed the speaker closer to the edge of the desk. "I'm going to change the pay structure," he said calmly, cutting through the noise. "Service fee is gone, base wages go up, tips go directly to staff. We'll be transparent with customers about where their money goes." On the other end, someone laughed in disbelief. "Keanu, that's not how this business works," a man's voice snapped. "You'll destroy the margins." "Margins aren't the only thing on the line," Keanu replied. "People are, and so is my name." For a second, no one spoke. Then the oldest-sounding investor's voice turned cold. "If you do this against our advice, we'll reevaluate our partnership. Contracts allow us to pull funding if operations become financially irresponsible. I'm sure your legal team can explain the rest." Lily looked from the phone to Keanu, reading the tension in his clenched jaw. She realized that he wasn't just choosing for them, he was risking something real of his own. Money, yes, but also reputation, deals, maybe the entire chain. The light on the speakerphone blinked steadily, waiting. On one side of that blinking light were lawyers and investors and 100 pages of contracts. On the other side, in the front of the restaurant, were servers balancing too many plates and too many worries, all under a logo that carried his face in people's minds. Keanu drew in a slow breath, every eye in the tiny office on him. "Then I guess," he said, voice steady but low, "I need to see what this place really is when we put people first, for one full day. No service fee, living wage, open books, we'll see what happens." The investors protested in overlapping shouts. The manager went pale, and Lily's hand flew to her mouth. She understood what he was saying. He was about to turn their next shift into an experiment that could either save them or shut the whole place down. And as the office filled with rising panic and urgent warnings, he simply reached for the phone and said one last thing before hanging up. "Tomorrow, we find out who we really are." The next morning, the line outside Harbor and Halo started forming before the doors even opened. Word had leaked. Someone had filmed Lily's confrontation and posted it with a shaky caption about Keanu secretly fixing his own restaurant. By dawn, the clip was everywhere. Some people came because they were fans, some because they were curious, and a few because they worked in restaurants too and wanted to see if anything would actually change. Lily stood by the front counter, tying her apron, pulse racing. A new sign was taped to the glass door in bold, honest letters. "Today only. No service fee. Staff paid fair wage. Tips if you choose to leave them. Go 100% to your server. Ask US anything." The manager paced like a man walking a tightrope during an earthquake. "This is chaos," he muttered, checking the reservation screen that was already flashing red. "Controlled chaos, maybe, hopefully, dear God." His phone kept buzzing with messages from the investor's side, which he ignored for now because the dining room lights were coming on and reality didn't care about text alerts. Keanu slipped in through the back, baseball cap low, black apron tied clumsily around his waist. Lily nearly choked when she saw it. "You're working?" she asked, trying to hide a nervous laugh. He shrugged with a small grin. "If I'm going to see how this place really runs, I should pick up a shift, right? Just don't trust me with anything that involves fire." She stared at him for a long second, then shook her head. "You have no idea what you just signed up for." The first wave hit as soon as the doors opened. Families, students, construction workers from the site down the street, influencers with cameras, a retired couple who came every Sunday. The host stand overflowed, voices layered and collided. Someone started a live stream near the bar. The cook shouted from the kitchen for backup. It felt like a dam had burst. "Keanu, take table 8. Lily yelled over the noise, shoving a notepad into his hand. He blinked, then hustled toward the table like a rookie actor hitting his first mark. A group of teenagers gasped when they realized who was taking their order. One of them fumbled his phone, dropping it straight into his water glass. Everyone burst into laughter, including Keanu, who fished the phone out and handed over a stack of napkins. "For the record," he said, grinning, "I do my own stunts, but I'm not liable for your electronics." Behind him, Lily moved like a whirlwind, refilling coffees, bouncing between jokes and apologies, checking on a table where a little girl colored superheroes on the back of a receipt. The difference was subtle but real. She walked a little taller. When she said, "We're actually getting a fair wage today," to a curious customer, her smile reached her eyes. Between orders, Keanu asked every staff member the same kinds of questions. "How long have you been here? What do you like about working here? What do you hate? What would you change?" He listened, really listened, even as he botched a coffee carry and nearly dropped a plate of pancakes. The kitchen roared with laughter when he misheard an order and yelled "one avocado volcano" instead of avocado bowl. By midday, sweat darkened his hoodie, his feet ached, and he had a whole new respect for the quiet efficiency with which Lily and the others did this every single day. Action scenes on set felt easy compared to spinning 5 tables while a kid cried. A couple argued softly, and a customer with food allergies needed careful attention. During a brief lull, Lily wiped down a table near the window and glanced outside. Her breath caught. On the sidewalk, pressed against the glass, was a familiar face. Her little brother, Mateo, thin shoulders hunched inside an oversized hoodie, clutching his school backpack. He waved shyly when he saw her looking. She hurried out to the sidewalk, untying her apron. "T, what are you doing here? You're supposed to be in class." "I had a doctor appointment, remember?" he said, lifting the strap of his backpack where his inhaler peeked out from a side pocket. "Mom had to work, so I took the bus. I wanted to see if you really work for him." His voice dropped, wide-eyed. "You weren't lying, Lily. He's in there carrying plates." She smiled, a real, full smile this time. "Yeah, he is, and he kind of sucks at it." "You think he'd talk to me?" Mateo asked, trying to sound casual and failing completely. Lily hesitated. The shift was insane, and dragging a starstruck teenager inside during peak rush felt insane too. But then she remembered last night, the way Keanu had insisted she be in the office, the way he'd chosen people over profit in front of the investors. Something in her wanted her brother to see that kind of courage up close, not just on a screen. "Stay here," she said. "I'll ask." Inside, she found Keanu balancing a tray, listening intently to a customer explaining why tipping culture made them uncomfortable. When he saw Lily's expression, he set the tray down. "You okay?" he asked. "My brother's outside," she said. "He's a fan, and he's the reason I haven't quit a dozen times. If it's too crazy, I get it, but—" "Bring him in," Keanu said immediately. "He can sit at the counter. I'll make him the most uneven stack of pancakes he's ever seen." A few minutes later, Mateo sat at the bar, eyes shining as Keanu fumbled heroically with the syrup. The moment was small and simple, just 3 people laughing in a noisy restaurant, but there was something sacred about it. Lily watched her brother talk about video games and comic books with the man whose movies had gotten him through some rough nights. For a few minutes, bills and asthma and overtime disappeared. It was just joy. The manager hovered in the background, torn between calculating table turnover and watching this unexpected scene. He saw the way other customers glanced over and smiled, not because a celebrity was on camera, but because the energy in the room felt different, lighter, kinder, like everyone was in on the same experiment. By closing time, the staff were exhausted and buzzing. The tip jar was overflowing. Some customers had left notes on receipts. "Thanks for being honest. You deserve better every day, not just today. Come to my bar after your shift, drinks on me." In the back office, away from the laughter of the last lingering guests, the manager stared at the end-of-day report on the screen. He rubbed his temples, then turned the monitor toward Keanu and Lily, who had come to see the damage for themselves. "Well," Keanu asked, "did we sink?" The manager let out a slow, disbelieving breath. "Food costs are ugly. Labor costs are higher. We comped too much coffee because someone," he shot Keanu a pointed look, "kept giving it away." But he tapped a line on the spreadsheet. Revenue. Another line, tips collected. Another, social engagement. "We made less profit than a normal Saturday," he said. "But we didn't lose money, and we've got more reservations booked for next week than I've ever seen. People are talking, in a good way." Lily's shoulders sagged with relief. Keanu nodded, a quiet hope lighting in his eyes. It wasn't a miracle. It wasn't disaster. It was something rarer and more complicated, a proof of concept that maybe, just maybe, decency didn't have to be bad business. Before any of them could speak, the office door shook with 3 hard knocks. The manager frowned and opened it. A stern-looking woman in a sharp suit stepped inside, a folder tucked under her arm. Behind her, 2 more people waited in the hallway, equally serious. She didn't bother with small talk. "Mr. Reeves," she said, meeting his eyes. "I'm here on behalf of the investors. We've reviewed today's stunt. We need to talk about breach of contract and what happens to this restaurant next." Lily felt the air leave her lungs. The numbers on the screen blurred. They survived the experiment, but now the real fight for Harbor and Halo, and for everyone who worked there, was about to begin.